Star Raiders for the Atari 2600 is a gem from a collector's standpoint. There's a lot going on here, so let's get into it. We instantly know we're in for a treat because the box is more than twice as thick as a standard Atari boxes, and there are multiple things on the cover to catch our attention. We have some of that classic hand-drawn Atari cover art, but we also see some kind of device here, and then in the corner we see there's a DC comic book included. A quick look at the back reveals a single screenshot including a spaceship that looks suspiciously like a TIE fighter. And more details on what's inside. We learn that the accessory pictured on the front is an Atari video touchpad, and the comic is, as is also listed on the front, quote, Atari First Edition Action-Packed Comic Book by DC Comics Volume 3, The Atari Force Meets the Dark Destroyer. This is confusingly worded, but I'll explain it when we get there. When we open the box, we are greeted by two more boxes. This one is the one like most Atari 2600 games came in, containing the game and literature, but there is one difference. This box doesn't have an image of the touchpad awkwardly imposed on the front. Looking back at the main box art, it looks out of place and its angle and scale are really off, but I wonder if that may have been partly on purpose, because it makes it stand out and we recognize it as an accessory and not just part of the art. The back of this is pretty much the same as the back of the outer box. We'll come back to this in a second and look at what's inside, but first let's look at the other box. The second box is for the video touchpad. Inside there's no manual or anything, just the touchpad. This is a really cool thing though. The way this game works is you plug the typical Atari 2600 joystick into the right side port, and this one goes into the left, and this is kind of like a control panel for your ship's functions. For example, computer on and off toggles your targeting computer, and galaxy map changes your view to that of a map of the galaxy so you can warp somewhere else. I love the level of immersion this little touchpad adds. Another cool thing about this is that it can be used for other games too. Bear with me. This touchpad was, of course, created specifically for Star Raiders, but there were a number of other games compatible with it, the only one I own being Codebreaker. As you can see, the Star Raiders cover card here is removable so that other games could have their own cards to place over the buttons. A couple things about this though. First, as far as I know, none of the other games that were compatible with this actually came with a cover card. You would just use it like this. Also, you might be wondering if you had to buy Star Raiders to have one of these to use with other games. No, there was another device called the Atari Keyboard Controller, which is what most people would have played these other games on. This has a slightly different design, and the cord is a little longer, which is nice, but it has the exact functionality of the touchpad. This is simply the one that you could buy separately. But the two devices can be used interchangeably. Now back to the actual game box. We've got the cartridge, the manual, a catalog, and the comic. I love it when games come with comics, and here I should establish some more clarification on what's going on. Remember the Volume 3 First Edition stuff? What they really meant in our modern parlance is Issue 3 of the first series of Atari Force. There were 5 issues of this first series of Atari Force, and they came packed in with 5 Atari 2600 games. Star Raiders came with this one, Issue 3. Later issues after number 5 came released via retail just like other comics. This one is alright, and it does tie into the game. It's about the Atari Force traveling across realities, and they stumble upon a planet that they learned was once home to a thriving civilization, but was eventually conquered by a species called the Xylons and rendered a wasteland. The Xylons are the bad guys of Star Raiders, and the Atari Force ends up fighting some of them. There's some not great writing here, which is kind of funny. At the beginning, the members of Atari Force are talking about how mind-blowing it is to literally traverse realities in their spaceship. Pilot Lydia Perez has to chime in and say, "Oh, funny, I look out there and all I think of is fundamental quantum physics." Okay, lady. At another point, Mission Commander Martin Champion, yes, that is his name, says to crew member Lisan O'Rourke, "You're the Olympic athlete of this little grouping." But evidently Commander Champion was confused because he is in fact the Olympic athlete of the group, as we learn in this very heroic looking bio in the back. Anyway, it's pretty cool that the map display they use for the ship in the art is just like the map in the game, except it's like a zoomed in version. One more thing, adding to the confusion, there was also a Star Raiders comic released in 1983, 1 year after the game. This was a full graphic novel with extra large pages and didn't come packed in a game or anything, but it does tie into the story of the game and of that Atari Force issue. I won't go deep into it, but this is just to explain that the Star Raiders comic is a separately released tie-in to the game, while Atari Force Issue 3 came in the Star Raiders box. And that pretty much does it for this one. The catalog here is pretty neat, but these could be found in other games too, and I've been going on for a while. And the manual doesn't have anything too special, but it does do a very good job of explaining the game. Gameplay-wise, this version of Star Raiders is simply inferior to its Atari 5200 counterpart, but as you can see, the box just has such cool stuff in it. I'm a sucker for comics and game boxes, but my favorite thing here is the touchpad. Sure, it only has a few buttons, but this was an awesome way to deepen the sense of immersion at the time. Altogether, these things add up to be a great novelty in the Atari 2600 library.